His isn't just another political controversy. This is a story about how the highest office in the land may have become a marketplace where information is currency, access is for sale, and those with deep pockets can potentially profit from government decisions before the public even knows they're coming. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Sergey Brin have been spotted landing at Palm Beach International Airport. Each billion AS, not just tech. T before we dive D. To understand the gravity of this scandal, we need to examine a case that perused red flags among congressional investigators and ethics watchdogs. Here's the timeline that has Senator Jeff Merkley and other Democratic lawmakers calling for investigations. March 2025. Pender and Sable attend a private meeting at Mar-a-Lago with senior Trump administration officials, including Energy Secretary Chris Wright. The details of what was discussed remain largely secret. Days later, each billionaire purchases more than 1 million shares of Venture Global stock, approximately $12 million worth each. This massive buying spree comes at a curious time, just before a major company announcement. Shortly after the stock purchases, Energy Secretary Wright grants Venture Global a critical export license essential for the company's expansion plans in Europe, a license worth potentially billions in future revenue. The stock price soars. Pender and Sabel's investments multiply in value almost overnight. Coincidence? Senator Merkley doesn't think so. Dirty oil and gas bucks are fueling the Trump administration, which should outrage all of us, he declared. The timing of the stock trades certainly merits investigation for potential conflicts of interest and insider trading. But here's what makes this case even more suspicious. Sable was among approximately 20 fossil fuel executives who attended a now infamous event in April 2024 at Mar-a-Lago, where Trump reportedly requested $1 billion in campaign donations from the fossil fuel industry in exchange for favorable legislation. Venture Global delivered. The company donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration. Individuals connected to the company spent $860,000 on lobbying in 2024 alone, and another $810,000 in early 2025. That's more than 12 times their previous high. The pattern is clear. Pay Trump, get private meetings, buy stock, receive favorable government decisions, profit massively. But this was just the beginning. If the Venture Global case was alarming, what happened around Trump's military strike in Venezuela is potentially explosive. In January 2026, the Trump administration conducted a military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of Nicolas Maduro and his wife. It was a bold move with massive geopolitical implications and potentially massive profit implications for those who knew it was coming. Here's where things get very dark. Trump himself admitted to holding conversations with all the oil companies before and after the raid. Before American special forces risked their lives in a foreign operation, before the American public was informed, before markets could react, oil executives were in the loop. And then, the trading began. On prediction market platforms, essentially betting sites where users wager on political outcomes, suspicious bets suddenly appeared on Maduro's capture. Someone, or multiple someones, bet hundreds of thousands of dollars that Maduro would be captured just before it happened. When the operation succeeded, those bets paid off handsomely. One trader allegedly profited $400,000 from advance knowledge of the operation. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, ranking member on the House Financial Services Committee, launched an immediate investigation. The idea that insiders may have used advance knowledge of the president's unilateral U.S. military action in Venezuela to place lucrative bets is deeply alarming, she stated. This is not just unethical, but it may be illegal. Waters pointed to a troubling yet familiar pattern of insiders appearing to profit ahead of market-moving Trump administration decisions. She's right to note the pattern, because the Venezuela case is far from isolated. Think about this for a moment. We're not talking about a few suspicious trades or some minor ethical violations. We're talking about military operations where American soldiers risk their lives, being used as investment opportunities for billionaires with the right connections. We're talking about national security secrets being whispered over expensive wine at private dinners. This is the kind of corruption you'd expect to see in a third-world dictatorship, not in the United States of America. In April 2025, just months into Trump's second term, another suspicion. But then, just hours later, Trump reversed course, announcing a 90-day pause on nearly all tariffs. Markets surged. The wild SW inside information, it was a roadmap to P. How here's where this story takes an even darker turn. You might be thinking, surely someone is investigating this. Surely there are laws against this kind of corruption. But what if I told you that the very agencies designed to investigate financial crimes have been systematically neutralized? What if the president's own family is directly profiting from the platforms where this insider trading is happening? What if everything, the Justice Department, the SEC, the regulatory agencies, has been captured by the very people who should be under investigation? The web of corruption goes so deep that you won't believe who's really pulling the strings. And the amount of money we're talking about? It makes the venture global case look like pocket change. Adding another layer to this scandal is the explosive growth of prediction markets under the Trump administration and the Trump family's direct financial interests in them. Platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi allow users to bet real money on political outcomes. Will a certain bill pass? Will a particular appointment be confirmed? Will the president announce new tariffs? The problem is obvious. If you have inside information about what the president is going to do, these platforms become money-printing machines. And here's the kicker. Donald Trump Jr. has personal investments in and advisory roles for some of these prediction market platforms. The president's own son stands to benefit financially from the growth and popularity of markets, where insider trading is notoriously difficult to detect and prosecute. In January 2026, The Washington Post reported that more than $200 million was staked on political or government actions on Polymarket and Kalshi, raising urgent concerns about insider trading from administration officials and politically connected individuals. Kalshi alone is now facing 19 federal lawsuits related to its operations. Under Trump, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the agency that oversees these markets, has cleared the way for Kalshi to expand, despite mounting evidence of potential abuse. The Justice Department had been investigating Polymarket for potential money laundering. But once Trump took office, the investigation was quietly halted. Let that sink in. The Justice Department was investigating these platforms for money laundering. Then Trump became president. Then the investigation stopped, and Trump's own son has financial interests in these same platforms. This isn't just a conflict of interest. This is a systematic takeover of regulatory agencies to protect a family business empire that directly profits from political insider information. What makes all of this possible is Mar-a-Lago itself, a private club that has effectively become a shadow White House, where official government business mingles with private commerce in ways that would have been unthinkable under any previous administration. Mar-a-Lago isn't secure like the White House. It doesn't have the same restrictions on who can enter or what conversations can be overheard. Members pay $200,000 just to join, plus tens of thousands in annual dues. And that membership has become one of the hottest tickets in American business since Trump's return to power. Why? Because being a member means you might run into the president in the dining room, on the golf course, or at the bar. You might hear things. You might be invited into conversations. You might learn about policy changes before they're announced. And in the world of high finance, that kind of information is worth far more than a $200,000 membership fee. Don Moynihan, a professor of public policy at the University of Michigan, put it bluntly. Part of what is worrying is the lack of ethical guardrails in the current Trump administration, where there doesn't seem to be a clear line between Trump's businesses and the presidency. Imagine you're a hedge fund manager. You pay $200,000 to join Mar-a-Lago. One evening, You're having dinner, and you happen to sit near the president. You overhear a conversation about upcoming tariffs or a military operation or a regulatory change. You make a phone call to your trading desk. By the next morning, you've repositioned your entire portfolio. When the announcement comes, you make tens of millions of dollars. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. This is happening. Multiple sources have confirmed that private conversations at Mar-a-Lago regularly include discussions of market-moving government policies. The club has become a giant insider trading forum where information flows freely to those wealthy enough to be there. Spokespeople for the companies and individuals involved have uniformly denied any wrongdoing. Venture Global insisted that their share acquisitions fully complied with SEC rules and regulations, and that the company strictly adhered to all laws, rules, and regulations relating to our interactions with government officials. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt offered a blanket denial. The president has never engaged and will never engage in conflicts of interest. But perhaps Trump's own words reveal the real attitude in this administration. In a shocking interview with the New York Times in January 2026, when asked about how his family has profited during his presidency, Trump responded, "I found out that nobody cared, and I'm allowed to." Read that again. "I found out that nobody cared, and I'm allowed to." It's not a denial. It's not even really a defense. It's an acknowledgement that he views the presidency as an opportunity for personal enrichment, and a belief that he can get away with it because his supporters don't care and there's no one willing to stop him. This might be the most chilling quote in this entire scandal. The President of the United States openly admitting that he's profiting from his office and justifying it by saying nobody cares. He's testing the limits of American democracy, seeing how much corruption the system can tolerate before it breaks. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Much of what's happening may not be technically illegal. Insider trading laws are designed primarily for corporate insiders trading on material non-public information about their companies. Applying these laws to political information and government policy is more complicated. The president isn't subject to most conflict of interest laws that apply to other federal employees. He can conduct business, take payments, and share information in ways that would be prosecutable for almost anyone else in government. Prediction markets occupy a legal gray area where insider trading is difficult to prove and even harder to prosecute. And even when suspicious trades are identified, the resources and political will to investigate are often lacking, especially when the investigation would target the president and his closest allies. But just because something might be legal doesn't make it right. Just because Trump might be allowed to profit from the presidency doesn't mean he should. And just because laws weren't written to prevent this specific kind of corruption doesn't mean it isn't corruption. The law was written for a different era, when presidents had at least some sense of shame, some understanding that public service meant setting aside personal interests. The law assumed that presidents would voluntarily divest from their businesses, would avoid even the appearance of conflicts of interest, would recognize that the office is a public trust, not a personal ATM. Trump has shattered all those norms, and because he's operating in areas where the law is ambiguous, he may get away with it all. What we're witnessing isn't just individual instances of potential insider trading. It's the systematic monetization of presidential access and information. Every meeting at Mar-a-Lago, every $1 million dinner, every whispered conversation on the golf course creates opportunities for those with access to profit at the expense of ordinary investors who play by the rules. When fossil fuel executives learn about regulatory changes before they're announced, they can buy or sell accordingly. When tech CEOs get advance warning of antitrust actions, they can position their portfolios. When defense contractors know which conflicts are being planned, they can invest in the right companies. Meanwhile, the teacher putting money into a retirement account, the small business owner investing savings, the middle-class family trying to build wealth, they're always playing catch-up, always reacting to news that others knew was coming. This information asymmetry doesn't just create unfair markets, it undermines faith in the entire system. It confirms the cynical belief that the game is rigged, that political connections matter more than hard work or smart investing, that American capitalism is really just a club for billionaires who can buy their way into the right rooms. Think about your own investments, your retirement account, your savings. You make decisions based on publicly available information. You watch the news, read analysts' reports, try to make smart choices. But what if the game is rigged from the start? What if by the time you hear about a policy change, the billionaires at Mar-a-Lago have already repositioned their portfolios? What if every time you invest, you're competing against people who literally had dinner with the president the night before? This is the reality of American markets under Trump. The playing field isn't just unlevel, it's a cliff, and ordinary investors are being pushed off while the wealthy few stand safely at the top. Multiple investigations are now underway, though their prospects remain uncertain. Congresswoman Maxine Waters' Democratic staff investigation is examining potential violations of insider trading laws, anti-money laundering requirements, sanctions compliance obligations, and regulatory loopholes that allow financial misconduct to flourish in prediction markets. Senator Jeff Merkley and other senators are calling for probes into the venture global stock trades and potential conflicts of interest throughout the administration. But here's the problem. With Republicans controlling both houses of Congress and Trump controlling the executive branch, who's going to investigate? The Securities and Exchange Commission? The Department of Justice? The House Financial Services Committee? Democrats have filed repeated requests for investigations that have gone unanswered. Whistleblowers who might expose wrongdoing face an administration that has shown little tolerance for dissent. And the media investigations that are uncovering these patterns face constant attacks and accusations of fake news. The people who could investigate are the same people who benefit from the system. The congressional Republicans who could subpoena witnesses and documents are the same Republicans who attend fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago. The regulators who could bring enforcement actions serve at the pleasure of a president who has made clear that loyalty matters more than integrity. This is how corruption becomes normalized, not through some dramatic coup or violent takeover, but through a slow erosion of accountability, through investigations that never happen, questions that never get answered, whistleblowers who get fired instead of protected. As of February 2026, this scandal is still unfolding. New revelations emerge weekly. More suspicious trades are identified. Additional whistleblowers come forward. The paper trail grows longer. But will anyone be held accountable? That's the billion-dollar question, perhaps literally. The Constitution provides mechanisms for addressing presidential misconduct, congressional oversight, investigations, impeachment. But those mechanisms require political will. They require enough members of Congress willing to put country over party, willing to investigate a president of their own party, willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads. History will judge whether that will materialized, or whether Trump was right when he said, "I found out that nobody cared." And now we come to the most disturbing question of all. What happens when a democracy realizes its institutions have been captured? What happens when the very people tasked with enforcing the law are the ones breaking it? What happens when corruption becomes so normalized that half the country refuses to even see it as corruption anymore? The answer might terrify you. Because what's happening at Mar-a-Lago isn't just about insider trading or conflicts of interest. It's about whether America as we know it can survive. It's about whether the rule of law means anything anymore. And what I'm about to tell you about who else is involved, about how deep this conspiracy goes, about the foreign governments and intelligence agencies that may be listening in at these Mar-a-Lago dinners. That's when this story goes from a financial scandal to a full-blown national security crisis. This scandal isn't really about Trump or Mar-a-Lago or any individual trade. It's about a fundamental question. Is the presidency for sale? Can the most powerful office in the world be accessed by anyone with enough money? Can government information, Information that moves markets and shapes economies be commodified and sold to the highest bidder? Can we maintain a functioning democracy when political power and personal profit become so thoroughly intertwined? These aren't abstract philosophical questions. They have real consequences for real people. When insiders profit from advanced knowledge, ordinary investors lose. When policy is shaped by who pays the most for access, the needs of average Americans get ignored. When the presidency becomes a business opportunity, governance suffers. The Mar-a-Lago meetings, the million-dollar dinners, the suspicious trades, these are symptoms of a deeper corruption. A corruption that says everything is for sale: access, influence, information, justice. The question now is whether the American people will accept this new normal or whether they'll demand something better, whether institutions will hold or whether they'll crumble, whether the rule of law applies equally to everyone or whether the rich and connected truly do play by different rules. We're at a crossroads. One path leads to accountability, reform, and a restoration of faith in democratic institutions. The other path leads to a future where government is just another business, where policy is auctioned to the highest bidder, where the only thing that matters is how much money you have and who you know. Which path will we take? That depends on whether enough Americans are paying attention, whether they care enough to demand change, whether they're willing to hold their leaders accountable regardless of party affiliation. As this scandal continues to unfold, one thing becomes crystal clear. We're witnessing a stress test of American democracy. The stock market isn't just an economic indicator. It's supposed to be a relatively level playing field where information flows freely and regulations prevent abuse. When that market becomes rigged by insider trading and political corruption, trust evaporates. And without trust, the whole system starts to break down. The same is true for democracy itself. When citizens believe that political outcomes can be purchased, that justice is for sale, that the president is essentially auctioning off access and information to the highest bidder, democracy becomes a hollow shell. Mar-a-Lago may have beautiful views of the Atlantic, but what's happening inside those gilded rooms is ugly. It's the corruption of power, the monetization of governance, and the systematic exploitation of public service for private profit. The leaks from Trump's Mar-a-Lago meetings have exposed a scandal that goes far beyond any individual stock trade. They've revealed a system where billion-dollar industries buy access to the president, where military operations become opportunities for betting profits, where policy announcements are preceded by suspicious trading, and where the line between public service and personal enrichment has been completely erased. Whether this scandal leads to accountability or simply fades into the background noise of a scandal-saturated administration remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The American people are watching, the evidence is mounting, and history will remember what happened in those candlelit dinners behind the golden doors of Mar-a-Lago. The question that remains is simple, yet profound. In America, is justice for sale? Or does it still mean something? But here's what should keep you up at night. Every single day that passes without accountability is another day that this system gets more entrenched. Every million-dollar dinner that goes unchallenged is another nail in the coffin of ethical governance. Every suspicious trade that doesn't result in prosecution is another signal that the rules don't apply to the wealthy and connected. And somewhere right now, at this very moment, another secret meeting is probably happening at Mar-a-Lago. Another billionaire is probably writing a check for access to the president. Another stock trade is probably being placed based on information the public won't hear for days or weeks. The machine keeps running. The corruption keeps spreading. And the question we all have to answer is, are we going to stop it? Or are we going to let it consume everything we once believed about American democracy? The choice is ours. The time is now. And the stakes couldn't be higher. This is the Mar-a-Lago scandal. This is insider trading at the highest levels of government. This is the systematic corruption of American democracy. And this is just the beginning of a story that will define the future of our nation.